All right, nothing like a marching band to get your day started. That's the firing. That's the Notre Dame fight song. I tell you what, that's just always good to hear. So let's just get started with the new lesson. Let me get this in autofocus. There we go. Okay, today we're going to learn the quadratic formula. Now, the quadratic formula we use when we have a quadratic equation. So if I have a quadratic equation, of course I have a quadratic term, an x squared term, plus a linear term, bx plus c equals 0. Okay? Now, you don't have to have the bx and the c to make it a quadratic. You just have to have a quadratic term, ax squared. Okay? But often we see all three terms. Okay, now if I want to solve this, and let's say it's not particularly easy to factor. In fact, it's troublesome, it's challenging to factor. Well, we always have a way we can solve it by using the quadratic formula to solve quadratic equations. Okay? Now it's really cool because hidden within here, hidden in the coefficients a, b, and c, it's kind of like a secret treasure. We can just use a, b, and c to find the answer to x. Okay? Now here's how this works. X equals, the numerator is the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by, notice that's all in the numerator, all divided by the denominator is just 2a. Okay, now I know it looks like a big formula, but once you work with it, it's going to be easier and easier. Now, let's go back to the Notre Dame fight song because I'm going to go ahead and sing this formula to the Notre Dame fight song. Okay, let's come back here. I'm going to take it back to the beginning. X equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. X equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. Da, 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 da. X equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. Okay, anyway, so sing that over and over and over, and you'll get that. You'll get that, okay? All right, now let's go back to here, and I'm going to show you how this works, okay? So go back to your notes, and let's write down number 1, 12x squared minus 4x minus 5 equals 0. Okay? So now we need a, b, and c. So I know that a is 12, b is negative 4, and c is negative 5. Those are my coefficients a, b, and c. Now I'm going to plug it into the formula. Here's the way I do the formula. I start about 3 or 4 lines down. X equals. Okay, the opposite of b is going to be positive 4, plus or minus the square root of b squared. Now b is negative 4. I always do this part in my head. Negative 4 squared I know is a positive 16. Minus 4 times a is 12 times c is negative 5. And that's all divided by 2 times a, which is 12. Okay, take a second to look at that. I plugged in the opposite of b, plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is 16, minus 4. 4 is always a constant in this formula, just like the 2 in the denominator. Minus 4a is 12, and c is negative 5, all divided by 2 times a, and a is 12. So first I've just plugged in. Now what I'm going to do is stair step up this radical. So this becomes 16. Now I have a negative times a negative, so I know my next term is going to be a positive. So I'm going to take 4 times 12 times 5. I'm going to pull out my calculator. I know we can do this in my head. in our head, but I don't want to make a silly arithmetic error. So 4 times 12 times 5, and that's going to give us 240. Now I'll add the 16 plus the 240, and I get 256. Now I'm going to take the square root of 256, and I get second square root, I get 16. Okay, 256 is a perfect square. The square root of 256 is 16. For all of the ones we're going to do today, they are going to be perfect squares. Tomorrow and Friday, we'll talk about what we're going to do if they're not perfect squares. But for today, this radical is going to be a perfect square. So now what I have is 4 plus or minus. This all worked out to be 16 divided by 2 times 12 is 24. Okay, now these are my two answers. So I have x equals 4 plus 16 over 24, and x equals 4 minus 16 over 24. I split up the plus and the minus to get my two answers. 4 plus 16 is 20, so I have 20 divided by 24. Well, 20 divided by 24, both top and bottom are divisible by 4. So that reduces to x equals 20 divided by 4 is 5, 24 divided by 4 is 6. So my first answer is 5 over 6. My next answer, 4 minus 16, is negative 12. So I have negative 12 over 24. Those are both divisible by 12. So I have x equals negative, because I have a negative in the numerator, 12 divided by 12 is 1, 24 divided by 12 is 2. So these are my two answers for this quadratic equation. Now when you answer it in Delta Math, you're going to want to leave it as fractions. Do not make it a decimal. So when you answer, you're going to do 5/6, comma, and it might give you another box, and then negative 1/2. So those are going to be your two answers. This is what x equals. Okay? All right. So that's the quadratic formula. Fantastic, guys. Put stars and stuff, put all kinds of stuff in your notes. Make this really stand out. Okay, now I'm going to do 1, 2, 3 more problems with the quadratic formula. Okay, number 2. 9x squared minus 12x equals negative 4. Well, the first thing I have to do is put it in standard form, so I need to get it equal to 0. So of course it's going to be 9x squared minus 12x. If I add 4 to both sides, that'll be plus 4 equals 0. Again, I'm going to leave myself some room, so x equals. The opposite of b is positive 12, plus or minus the square root of. Okay, negative 12 times negative 12 is 144, so that's b squared minus 4 times a is 9 times c is 4, all divided by 2 times a, and a is 9. Okay, I'm going to stair step up my radical. So that's the square root of 144. Now notice here I have just minus. Now I'm going to take 4 times 9 times 4. So the 9 times 4 is 36. So 36 times 4 is 144. Well, son of a gun. 144 minus 144. Well, that's the square root of 0, which is just 0. So I have x equals 12 plus or minus 0, all divided by 18. Well, what's going to happen is I have 12 plus 0 divided by 18, and I have x equals 12 minus 0 divided by 18. These two are going to yield the same result. This is 12/18, and this is 12/18. Okay? Both of those are divisible by 6. Both numerator and denominator are divisible by 6. 12 divided by 6 is 2. 18 divided by 6 is 3. Same thing here. So we end up with the same result. Okay? This means that this equation has two solutions, but it's actually the same solution. We call that a multiplicity of 2. You don't really need to know that for the homework, but that's what it's called. When you get both of them that are the same, that's called a multiplicity. So this answer has a multiplicity of 2. So when you write down your answer, you only have to give the one answer, 2/3. Okay, wanted to make you aware of the fact that sometimes that happens. All right, number 3. (20x squared plus 24x plus 5 equals 4x squared. Okay, again, I have to get this in standard form. So I'm going to subtract 4x squared from both sides. Now notice this is an x squared term. So I'm going to subtract it from the like term, the 4x squared term. 20 minus 4 is 16x squared plus 24x plus 5 equals 0. Okay, now I'm ready to plug it into the quadratic formula. X equals the opposite of b, negative 24, plus or minus the square root of b squared. Now I'm going to double check. I just want to make sure I'm doing 24 squared correctly. 24 times 24, 576, minus 4 times a, which is 16, times c, which is 5, all divided by 2 times a. Okay, let's work with the radical. So that's the square root of 576 minus 4 times 16 times 5, 320. 576 minus 320 is 256. Well, gosh, didn't we have that earlier? Yeah, in our first problem, we had the square root of 256, and that's a perfect square, and that's 16. So I have negative 24 plus or minus 16 all over 32. Hey, just for fun, hit pause and see if you get the two correct answers. Okay, welcome back. X equals negative 24 plus 16 over 32, and x equals negative 24 minus 16 over 32. Negative 24 plus 16 is negative 8 over 32. Now negative 8 over 32, both of those are divisible by 8 actually. So the first one is negative because I have a negative numerator. 8 divided by 8 is 1. 32 divided by 8 is 4. And the other answer is, let's see, negative 24 minus 16. I don't want to mess up here, so I'm going to go negative 24 minus 16. So I have negative 40 over 32. And those are also both divisible by 8. So this fraction reduces to negative 40 divided by 8 is 5. 32 divided by 8 is 4. So negative 5/4. So my two answers are negative 1/4 and negative 5/4. And that's what x equals. So this is my answer. Okay? All right, you guys are doing fantastic. I just want to do one more just to make sure we're rocking and rolling okay. Number 4. X squared plus 10x plus 14 equals x. Okay, now remember, the coefficient here is an understood 1. So when I get this thing set equal to 0 in standard form, I'm actually going to be subtracting 1x. So that's the like term. So I'm going to subtract 1x. So I have x squared plus 10x minus 1x is 9x plus 14 equals 0. So now I know a also, again, this coefficient is 1. And they won't write it in, but remember, keep it in your mind. I'm going to put this in green. There's an understood 1 there. Okay, let's do the quadratic formula. In fact, now would be another good time to hit pause. Try it by yourself, see if you get the correct answer, and then circle back. Okay, let's do this. X equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. I'm not a very good singer, but you get the idea. Okay, so now let's see. We have the square root of 81 minus 4 times 14. 4 times 14 is 56. 81 minus 56. 25. And like I told you, all the ones that you'll do today, all the problems that you'll do today are perfect squares. The square root of 25 is 5. So my answers are -9 plus or minus 5 divided by 2. So we have -9 plus 5 divided by 2, and x equals -9 minus 5 divided by 2. So from here, I have -9 plus 5 and -9 minus 5. -9 plus 5 is -4 divided by 2. So that actually turns out to be an integer, -2. And over here, -9 minus 5 is -14 divided by 2, which turns out to be another integer, -7. So our answers are -2 and -7. Yay! That is it! And if you guys got that, that is fantastic. I'll tell you what that is. That is a, hang on here, that is a slam dunk. Way to go. Boom. Nice job. You did it. All right. Now, I want you to remember the Notre Dame fight song. So let's just do this one more time. And let's back it up way over to here. And let's sing it again. Okay, and now x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. X equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, you can call that up on your laptop. Call that up and listen to it and sing the song through in your mind. And I also have it written over here. Take a little walk with me again. Have it on my easel. Here's our quadratic formula. X equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. Da 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 bum. Da 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 da. Yukon, did you like the quadratic formula? Awesome. Okay, say bye-bye. Bye, guys.